Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, the podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I am your host, Chris Gargano, and the topic this week is getting in the zone. How do you get into that zone performance? What does that mean? Steph Curry hitting 17 threes in a row. Patrick Mahomes audibling to call the right play at the right time, or running for the first down, or completing 23 out of 25. Those are zone moments. Well, our guest, Buddy Biancalana, found the zone during the 1985 World Series, where he hit 73 points above his career average. And in the postseason of 85, he did not make one error at shortstop. How did he get there? What is his life story? This is a fascinating conversation and a continuation of a conversation he and I had in person as part of the Novato Speaker Series in my hometown of Novato, California. Buddy's from a town just south of that in Marin County. And this conversation is rich and something you need to hear. And that's why I invited him on Keep the Line Moving. All right, Buddy, it's great to see you. It was wonderful spending time with you in Novato at the Speaker Series. Tell me how you're doing. And then, Buddy, the question is, what I like to always ask people is, where do we start? How do you start with your story?
Well, we certainly have a story, right? Everyone has a story. And I really used to start with my story being my zone experience in the World Series, which I'll get to. But that was before I knew I would be okay from all the concussions I had, which started as a child. And my first concussion was when I was less than a year old. I fell off a bathroom counter. And I guess the fact that I stopped crying, everyone thought I was okay. Well, I wasn't okay. It made learning very difficult in grade school. And I had additional concussions that were really, really traumatizing. But head injuries are very interesting because you can't really tie them together, especially when you have one as a baby and people think you're okay. They don't really mention it to you when you're older, like, oh, maybe this is why I'm having a little trouble learning this subject in school. But that's kind of where it all started. I had trouble. My airflow was very challenged in sports like basketball, right? We're running up and down the court. It was very difficult for me to keep my nervous system in a settled state to the point where I could, shoot effectively. But I was very quick and could do some things, and I played a little bit. But baseball was a slower paced sport, right? And so it was something that I could excel at. And I did, to the degree that I ended up being a first round pick ahead of Hall of Famers Ryne Sandberg and Cal Ripken by the Kansas City Royals, and ended up signing and made the journey through the minor leagues. But once I get to the big leagues, I could never really figure out how to stay in the lineup on a regular basis. My play was inconsistent. I'd be on the bench for a while and then I'd get off and play okay and, back and forth. But with about 13 or 14 games to go in the regular season in 85, Dick Hauser, our manager at the time, inserted me in the lineup as the starting shortstop and played the rest of the season and played pretty well and ended up playing all 14 postseason games. But the real cool moment was in the World Series when we were against the Cardinals, where I had this zone experience where everything just slowed down, Chris, and I wasn't thinking, and everything was just very fluid and effortless. And, I ended up playing the best baseball of my life. And a lot of people thought I played over my head, which, maybe I kind of wondered, did I? But now that I know what I know about the brain and the brain-body connection, I realized, no, I didn't play over my head. I was just able to access my full ability.
When you had the childhood concussions, a series of them, as you said, right? You must have had similar experiences that you had in the World Series in 1985 prior to that, because, Buddy, you went number one ahead of Cal Ripken and Hall of Famer Ryne Sandberg, both Hall of Famers.
I wouldn't say I had similar experiences of zone moments. I have afterwards, but I think there probably was just an imbalance in my system, right? My whole physiology, because of the concussions, where my intellect just wasn't. I have a good intellect, but it wasn't developed. It wasn't able to be accessed, and so I think I just, maybe there was an overcompensation that allowed me to develop the skills that I had. The physical skills that allowed me to be a high pick. I could really run, I could throw, and I could field. I had three, pretty good tools that felt, that the Royals thought enough of to make me a first round pick. But I've seen that in people that, have certain struggles in one area, or they're just really, really gifted. And then you kind of see there's a flip side that's really not developed at all, where they can really, really struggle at. And so that was kind of my case. I struggled in school because of, I just couldn't process information. Certain subjects I could, but other subjects I could not. but it really helped me develop other areas to, play sports at a high level. So in that sense, I guess I turned lemons into lemonade, and I've kind of used all of the experiences to kind of do more of what I'm doing now.
So what you're doing now, you have a company called Zone Motion, and we're going to get into detail on who you help, how you help them. But with the knowledge you have now as a gentleman, that isn't 22 or 25 anymore, as you look back now at that moment in the tunnel with the Royals in 1985, in that trigger moment that enabled you to get on the line to be introduced in front of millions of people, in that singular moment, you could have ran and, went to the parking lot and gone home and, as you said, watched the game, but you didn't. Something happened that propelled you forward. Do you know what it is now?
Chris, yeah, I know. We at the Nevada Speaker Series, I spoke about how, as a kid, I always wanted to play in the major leagues, but I could never fathom playing in the World Series. It's just one of those events that's something, you watch on TV. For me, that was my thinking. And even when I got to the big leagues, I never thought about playing the World Series. At the end of the year, I'd go home and enjoy the winter. Hopefully I had a good season, and I'd watch the World Series on TV. But all of a sudden, as I mentioned the other night, I'm sitting in my locker before game one of the World Series, and I'm the starting shortstop. And usually, I'd always get nervous before a game a little bit, right? And I'd make myself a sandwich or grab some Gatorade, something to just kind of change my mood, right? To try and deal with my nerves. But in the moment, with 20 minutes to go before I had to be in the dugout for introductions, I got completely blasted by a wave of fear that I'd never felt before, to the point where I was, I really, not only did I not think that I could catch a ball thrown to me from 10 feet away, I knew for sure. That's how paralyzed I was with the fear. In that moment, I was I was thinking, what can I do? Can I go watch a game on TV? Or, what am I going to do? I can't go play shortstop because I can't catch the ball. That's how I felt. And that's the power of our emotions, man. They can really play with us. So what did happen was I just acknowledged to myself, man, this is really scary. And, what happened was the fear started to subside to the point where I could at least get out of my chair and grab my bat, my helmet, my glove, and make my way down to the dugout to wait for my name to be introduced, run to the foul line. And then what happened next is I went out and I played, arguably or unarguably, the 7 best baseball games of my life, where I had the feeling I just couldn't do anything wrong, even if I tried. And, I hit 73 points higher than my career average, played errorless at shortstop. And I choose my words carefully when I say every single ball hit me right in the sweet spot of my glove. And every throw came out of my hand for 7 games, just perfect speed and trajectory, like butter off a hot knife. And I always like to reference one specific play on a ball that on a stolen base attempt. I believe it was Ozzie Smith. Frank White, our second baseman, was taking the throw at second. The ball kicked away into shallow left center field, and I just jogged after it. I picked it up and wheeled back and threw just a soft throw to second to keep the runner at second. And, it was a play that anybody listening to this podcast could make. But in that moment, what was unique for me was I had a sensation that, oh my God, I feel like I could have kicked it to him. And I don't know if you've ever kicked a baseball, but it's difficult to do. It's not like kicking a soccer ball, okay? Right. But that's how I felt, that my precision with my brain and body, made me feel that I could actually kick the baseball to my second baseman, make about a 50-foot throw. So it was just some force had overtaken me that was almost bigger than me. And it really triggered my brain and my brain-body connection, my whole nervous system, to play at a level that I'd never experienced before. It was very interesting. I had a really good third baseman next to me in George Brett, a Hall of Famer, and a great second baseman, I think it's 7 or 8 time Gold Glove winner, in Frank White. But in that series, in big situations, I wanted the ball hit to me. That it's not that I didn't think they would catch the ball. It's just I knew that I was definitely going to catch it and make the play. And that's how confident I felt in that moment, where, I just had this experience internally that it was just really, really amazing experience.
How did it change your life? How did the 85 series and that zone performance change your life? David Letterman, you went on the Letterman show. I mean, other opportunities came your way. And how did you deal with those changes and opportunities that were coming your way?
It was very interesting when you're playing the game of baseball, something, that I've done since I was, 5, 6, 7 years old. You don't realize how powerful the media is, and, just how many people are watching you play when you're playing in the World Series. Millions, right? And so after the series, and, I had this good series. I was the leading vote getter of position players for MVP. Saberhagen Brett Saberhagen, our Cy Young Award-winning pitcher that year, won the award rightfully so. Had a great series. And so my phone started ringing off the hook with all kinds of opportunities. And I remember telling my wife at the time, I'm really not interested in doing any of this stuff. I'm just, playing the game I love. And I felt like there was something deeper taking place in me. In fact, I said to a reporter after Game 7 when we won, I was being interviewed by a reporter, Karen Kornacki, I believe was her name. And I said, I just wish I could give something back to the fans. They really, really embraced me. They were, chanting my name. I was kind of the underdog to Ozzie Smith in the series. And the fans really took to it and, kind of were beloved of me. And they were chanting my name. And it was just really, really a cool experience. And I really, really appreciated it and fed off it. And so I said to her, geez, I just wish I could give something back to the fans, and I said, I guess we just won a World Series for them. So that's pretty good. But deep down inside of me, there was something else percolating that I knew that was, quote, better than the World Series. And it was figuring out, okay, what happened inside of me that allowed me to feel and experience the game as slowing down and not thinking and just more ease and effortless, which is really how we're supposed to live life, is in a more effortless manner where we're directed, right? We have to take action, but being in a state of a mind-body connection where there's just more ease, there's more precision, there's more efficiency, more effectiveness, less intellect involved. That's what I knew existed. However, it took quite a journey for me to figure it out. 20 months later, I was out of the big leagues because I had no idea what happened in the World Series. And, I worked very, very hard, probably harder than I'd ever worked to remain at that level of play. And I realized the harder I worked, the more evasive my zone experience was. And so I remember playing my last game at shortstop in the big leagues was at Cincinnati. I was with the Astros at the time. And I literally felt like I was playing in quicksand. And so I've been able to quantify that and, more importantly, teach it now.
And so that's the zone motion. That's where you are with your company. So talk about the athletes that you work with. Let me just read you this, and we can use this as a jumping off point. Professional golfer Scott McCarron in 2017 on the Champions Tour described Biancalana as a sports psychologist, essentially characterized his guidance as, quote, abstract thinking. McCarron figures his body knows what to do after a lifetime of hitting golf balls, and his mind just needs to stay out of the way. And that's courtesy of the San Francisco Chronicle, an article that I found. You and I have talked about that, but that's a good jumping off point, right? Scotty McCarron and other athletes across several different sports you've worked with to get their mind at peace, I guess, with their physical tools. Is that fair?
In essence, peace is a good thing, right, in life. And anytime we're peaceful, we're going to enjoy more so. But it's more about how information that we're processing moves through our brain. The emotion is stored in the middle of the brain, the basal ganglia. It's not stored in the muscles. And so we want to get the information that we're taking in. We call it our library preparation. And once we access the library preparation, then we have a chance to allow the information to travel to the back of the brain, which is called the motor system. The cerebellum is back there. And that's what allows all the muscles to fire in a synchronistic manner. And so that's kind of the first step. And then working with the emotional body is very, very important. The emotions undermine everything else, and the brain is the operating system, the muscles, I like to say, but the emotions affect brain functioning. So if the emotions are not being processed in a manner conducive to get the energy to the brain function is not going to be what we want. So you can really speed up development with this type of training.
So, Buddy, you have worked with doctors, experts. You've done case studies. You have an elaborate library of content and ways in which you have studied this. How would you describe your process of diving into this material with the people that you trust, the experts in their respective areas, and created this business to help, like you said, many years ago when you were talking to the reporter, that you knew that you had to give back and help people in their journeys as well?
Well, yeah, it's just been quite a journey. It's there's so many philosophies around and theories around. And when I first learned and, we figured some things out about zone motion, I knew it wasn't a theory or philosophy. I knew that, wow, this is how it works. This is how the brain-body connection works. And then I started doing research just to, gain more knowledge and gain more of an understanding, right? A lot of athletes can have success and really they don't know what's taking place that allows them to have success. Yet if they're struggling, they typically know what they're doing wrong. A baseball hitter is struggling. He may say, pulling my front shoulder, or I'm not getting my elbow in the slot. But if they're really, really going well, they may not know what's taking place. They just say, you know what, geez, I don't know. Everything was just slowing down and not thinking. And so really understanding that process, first of all, working with a neuroscientist, Dr. Fred Travis, learned a lot about the brain. And so it led me to a study at the American Sports Medicine Institute. Dr. Andrews down there has a sports institute. Dr. Andrews is the leading go-to orthopedic surgeon for Tommy John surgery. And Dr. Glenn Fleissig is the leading biomechanist in the world, baseball biomechanist. And so with Dr. Fleissig overseeing the study, did a study with 17 college pitchers, and it was extremely successful in the fact that 88% of them felt less fatigue, less shoulder discomfort. There was less elbow discomfort. They were more locked in. It was very, very successful. No one had a negative experience. A couple guys had a neutral experience. So in that regard, it was very, very positive. I did a study on heart rate. People around baseball love to talk about heart rate variability, which is really, really important. Just in life, our ability to be resilient can be enhanced by heart rate variability. How quickly can we recover from a stressful event? What I'm more interested in is the heart rate during the event, right? So zone motion is able to keep the heart rate, the training keeps the heart rate at a lower maximum heart rate while the athlete's performing. And so the muscles start to fire more efficiently, more effectively. And therefore, we see things like the 28% more strikes at the study at the American Sports Medicine Institute. And I love doing the research. I want to do one more study with pitchers, and we'll probably get to it next year.
That's really interesting. So let's level set, buddy, because you have a great ability to tell your story. You have a great ability to tell the story of zone motion. For those that listen, regular emerging leaders and people trying to find tools to be better, at whatever it is they're doing. Take us outside of sports and talk to us about some people that you've worked with, perhaps in other industries that you've helped connect the mind and the body.
I've worked with musicians. I've worked with doctors, surgeons, and, several salespeople. And working in the sales world is very interesting because, we're all selling to some degree, and we've all been sold to, right? And we know that in the sales world, when someone starts to push us a little bit, or nudge us, or we do that, it creates a little separation, right? All of a sudden the trust factor can become a little less so in that moment, right? If we can give them an experience that is not based on belief, but based on knowing, right? There's a difference between belief and knowing. And so when we can give a neurophysiological experience, that someone has the experience of undeniably knowing 100% that this process in their brain and body must be their priority over anything else, right? Then they're bought in, right? And then their paradigm can shift. You don't have to try and convince them or quote, sell them. They sell themselves. They naturally become empathetic. They're not as concerned to the outcome. And when we can really detach from the outcome, right, the fear, the doubt disappears, right? We're more interested in the experience. The experience feels better than anything else. In my teaching, the experience of me teaching is more gratifying than anything else, right? I love helping the person, but I get so much more out of it than I ever thought possible because of the coherence between the two parties. So when you have coherence between two people, right, there's ease, there's effortless. It's very natural. Right. And so both parties start to experience a state that they both want. And it's really, really wonderful.
And you embody that. I got to say that about you. In being in your presence, you embody that. It's a very relaxed, confident, and you said the word perfectly, empathetic way of looking at life, meaning that there are two salespeople trying to negotiate a deal or come to a common purpose. And if you just let go of it, let go of the trying to persuade or influence and just flow with them, right? And if you take that and care about the other person and the overarching outcome of two individuals winning, you can do really good things. The opposite of Buddy Biancalana is control. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Yeah. When we're trying to control an outcome, control any aspect of life, there's resistance in our physiology that will hinder us to some degree. It doesn't mean we can't close a sale sometimes and get a hit, right? Or hit a straight golf shot.
What can somebody do today? Obviously, they could go to Zone Motion. We'll put that in the show notes, how they can work with you. But if they want to get going right now and say you're busy or there's something going on, what could they do today? Little steps.
Well, there's nothing more important than emotional intelligence. About a year ago, I went to lunch with a good friend of mine who's a broker for Edward Jones. And his boss, regional director of the Midwest, was at the meeting, who was blind. And my son was there as well. And I've talked about emotional intelligence with my son, of course, who's a sophomore at University of Missouri. And I asked Jack was the gentleman's name who was blind. I said, Jack, you've been so successful. You're the regional director. He probably makes $1 million a year. And I said, what is the most important characteristic that you possess that has allowed you to be so successful as a blind man? Without hesitation, he said, emotional intelligence. And my son said, did my dad pay you to say that? And then a couple months later, they invited me to play in a foursome at a golf tournament. And so Dave, my friend, the broker, and Jack, his boss, were in the foursome, and another guy. And we're playing 18 holes of golf, right? And Dave would line him up, say, Jack, you're 150 out. Here's your 7-iron, and we're going to line you up. And here you go. Now turn your club head 1 degree or 2 degrees, in or open or whatever, and say, okay, now you're ready to go. And he'd hit his ball, right? And so for 18 holes, not one time did I see Jack show 1 ounce of frustration, right? He was just able to completely flow, right? All the emotions, he really mastered his emotional state. And so it was just the most amazing experience. It's a story that anytime I'm speaking or on a podcast, I like to share that story because it just exemplifies what it can be like. We can live a life where, we may get frustrated, but when we can really process it all, then we have a chance for our brain to function at a high level. To answer your question, right, what can they do? Really do like I did in the World Series, just kind of sit with what you're feeling in those moments that are pretty intense that we, as humans, we can experience. Be willing to be with them as opposed to mood altering there's nothing more important than that.
It's great advice. And Buddy, we all know people who fight themselves, right? Emotional intelligence, right? They're fighting themselves. The leader comes into the room with the group that they're leading, and you could see there's a fight, there's angst, there's difficulties, there's sorting through. We're all human. We all do that. But what you're saying, understand that, take a deep breath, and be there for the other person, the emotional intelligence quotient. Be there for those you're leading. They don't need to see that. This is a whole other podcast. This is a series of what we're doing on this podcast, but that's right. That's the essence of it. It's like this blind gentleman, Jack, showed no frustrations because he understood he was getting help from his buddy on how to align, and he was enjoying the day with the three of you.
And he had no fear of failure. Fear doesn't exist, right? Fear doesn't exist. It's just in our own physiology.
I'm with you, buddy. Yeah. I'm with you.
I know you are. That's why you're so good at what you do. You got a great emotional intelligence, Chris. Really, really wonderful.
Thank you, buddy. No, I really appreciate that. I work hard on it, and I have a genuine love of people, and I find them fascinating and just extremely interesting. It's a wonderful journey. All right, all-star moments, buddy. You ready?
Okay.
These are first thought, best thought. We're going to rapid fire. Here we go. 1. It's a loaded question. You just spent the last 30 minutes doing this, but succinctly, how do you deal with adversity?
Welcome it.
2, how do you give yourself fuel?
Meditation, clean food, exercise, sunshine, clean water. That's about it.
Those are awesome.
Great people around me.
Another good one. 3, what does never give up mean to you?
Never give up. Dean Smith said to always give up. And I when we give up, there's fight. When we don't give up, there's fight. We're holding on. And when we can just let go and say, you know what? I have to give in right now. And I've had some really, really amazing experiences in my life. One I like to talk about, where I felt like I had all these deals working several years ago, and all of a sudden they just came to a halt. I was like, what the heck? I had 5, 6, 7 deals going. What happened? And I, kind of fought it for a couple of days. And then I just said, I'm just going to go hang out. And I hooked up with my friend at Whole Foods. We sat outside on a beautiful, beautiful day in Scottsdale and enjoyed the sunshine and just hung out and did nothing. And all of a sudden, boom, my phone started ringing off the hook, So I let go, so the never give up. To a degree, I agree, never give up, keep moving, but detach from the outcome as you're going towards the desired outcome.
4, What is the value of collaboration?
Oh, it's great. For me, there's nothing more gratifying than good relationships. So when you find people that you can get along well, and you're like-minded, and you put your energies together and move in the direction you both want, it's a beautiful thing. What we're always after is to feel good and fulfillment, and helping others, and collaborating, and getting, coherence between multiple people is really powerful.
5, buddy. You've hired people over the course of your career, obviously. What do you look for when you're hiring somebody?
Well, I've had a lot of people come into my life that are very helpful. What I look for is creativity, open-mindedness, flexibility in the mind, right?
Great answer. And lastly here, describe yourself as a leader in one sentence.
I think I have, I have acceptance and compassion and more love in each moment for myself, and therefore we've got to give that to each other. I think it's easy to lose sight of what someone is capable of, but I like to always say, treat them as if they're already who they're capable of becoming.
Lastly, the Texas Rangers just won the World Series. Bruce Bochy, his 4th World Series title. I'm a major fan of Bruce Bochy. I make that known. Your thoughts on his selfless nature and how he's always deferring credit, and the kind of individual that he is to guide that team in his first year to their first and only world title.
Yeah, I know players who play for Bochy, and they love him. They just love the person he is, the ease, and he cares about people, and he just has a wonderful way about him. As a manager of people, you've got to be able to be settled, emotional intelligence, right? You've got to be steady. Your environment's extremely, extremely important, and to have someone leading the charge who's settled, is not going to react in a negative way when things don't go right, which they will definitely not go right throughout the course of baseball season. It's a great gift, and he certainly possesses that. He was the perfect hire for the Rangers, and love those people. I have a friend who's with the Rangers, and I'm really happy for those guys.
Wonderfully said. Buddy, you're the best. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, your insights, your storytelling, and the way you see the world. I really, really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Chris, so much.
And we thank Buddy very much for being on the show. My number one takeaway is this: to avoid resistance in trying to control issues. We talk about this a lot on this podcast. Leaders trying to control situations, control outcomes, control people. You just heard Buddy say, in his opinion, you can't do that. It's better to just let go, be prepared, do all the work necessary, understand the situation, but exercise your emotional intelligence to know that you cannot control the situation. Be in that flow state, the zone state, as Buddy said. And he referenced being in a sales meeting and having the outcome be mutually beneficial, having true and sincere empathy for the other person, and the outcome to have both parties win. I thought that was fascinating. I really appreciate Buddy and his thoughts on so much that we talked about today. Hope you enjoyed it as well. For our video and podcast producer, Jack Radutsky, I am Chris Gargano. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week on Keep the Line Moving. Every week, you hear guests on this podcast talk about some of their biggest leadership challenges. As a leader, you want to make an impact on those you lead and reach your organization's goals, while also optimizing your time management. Wherever you are in your leadership journey, we could all use some help. This is what we focus on with our group and individual coaching services. To book a call or get more information, email me directly at chrisg@garganoleadership.com or visit our website at garganoleadership.com. For our podcast and video producer, Jack Radutsky, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal, have a great week, everybody.